In a city that never slept, where skyscrapers pierced the clouds and cars honked endlessly, life moved at a breakneck pace. People rushed to work, sipped coffee on their way to meetings, and scrolled through their phones as if time itself was running out. Amidst this chaos stood Evelyn Harper, a name everyone knew but few truly understood. She was beautiful, wealthy, and seemingly untouchable. A socialite who glided through parties like a queen surveying her kingdom. But beneath her polished exterior lay a heart frozen by years of loneliness and privilege. Evelyn lived in a world of glittering surfaces, luxury apartments, designer clothes, and champagne-filled nights. Yet, despite her outward success, she felt empty. Her days were filled with shallow conversations, fake smiles, and calculated gestures meant to impress others rather than connect with them. Friends, she had plenty, or so it seemed, but none of them knew the real Evelyn, the one who longed for something more meaningful than gossipy brunches and red carpet appearances. On the other side of the city, far removed from Evelyn's glittering world, lived Marcus Kane. He was a man of quiet strength, his dark skin weathered by years of hard labor under the sun. Marcus worked as a construction worker, building the very structures that made up the city's skyline. Unlike Evelyn, he didn't have money or fame, but what he lacked in material wealth, he made up for in character. He carried himself with dignity, his piercing eyes reflecting wisdom earned through hardship. Marcus had come to the city not long ago, fleeing a painful past he preferred not to talk about. Some said he was running from trouble. Others whispered he was searching for redemption. Whatever the truth, Marcus kept to himself, working tirelessly during the day and spending his evenings reading books borrowed from the local library. To most people, he was just another face in the crowd, easy to overlook. But those who took the time to notice saw kindness in his actions and resilience in his demeanor. One sunny afternoon, Evelyn strolled down a busy street lined with high-end boutiques. She wore a sleek white dress paired with oversized sunglasses, her heels clicking rhythmically against the pavement. Passers-by turned their heads to admire her, but Evelyn barely noticed. She was lost in thought, replaying fragments of conversations from last night's charity gala. Had she impressed the right people? Would her photo appear in tomorrow's society column? These questions consumed her, leaving little room for anything else. As she passed a small cafe, Evelyn overheard two women whispering excitedly. Curious, she slowed her steps. "Did you hear about him?" one woman asked, leaning closer to her friend. "The new guy at the construction site. He saved 3 workers when scaffolding collapsed last week." "No way," the second woman exclaimed. "Is he really as brave as they say?" "I don't know," the first replied, lowering her voice conspiratorially. "But there's something about him. He doesn't smile much, but when he does, it's like the whole room lights up." Evelyn rolled her eyes. "Brave? Lights up?" She dismissed the conversation as idle chatter. What did she care about some construction worker? Her world revolved around power lunches and exclusive events, not tales of heroism from dusty work sites. With a flick of her wrist, she adjusted her bag and continued walking, dismissing the stranger entirely. Meanwhile, Marcus was finishing up his shift at the construction site. Sweat dripped down his forehead as he tightened bolts and checked equipment, ensuring everything was secure before heading home. The job was grueling, but Marcus didn't mind. It gave him purpose, a sense of contributing to something bigger than himself. Plus, it paid the bills, a luxury he hadn't always had. As Marcus packed up his tools, the ground beneath him began to tremble. At first, it was faint, a subtle vibration that caused loose screws to rattle in their boxes. Workers exchanged nervous glances, unsure whether to laugh it off or take cover. But within seconds, the trembling intensified, growing into violent shakes that sent tools clattering to the ground. Panic erupted as men shouted warnings and scrambled for safety. Across town, Evelyn felt the same tremors while browsing a boutique. At first, she thought it was just the subway rumbling beneath the streets, a common occurrence she barely registered anymore. But then the shaking grew stronger, knocking over displays and sending glass shattering to the floor. Startled, Evelyn stumbled backward, her arms flailing as she tried to steady herself. Before she could react, a loud crash echoed through the store. A section of the ceiling collapsed, trapping her beneath heavy debris. Dust filled the air, choking her lungs and obscuring her vision. Evelyn coughed violently, struggling to free herself. Her designer dress was torn, her elegant updo ruined, but none of that mattered now. All she could think about was survival. "Help!" she screamed, her voice hoarse and desperate. "Please, someone help me!" For several agonizing minutes, no one came. The boutique was deserted, its staff having fled in terror. Evelyn's cries went unanswered, swallowed by the chaos outside. Just when she thought all hope was lost, a shadow appeared in the doorway. Squinting through the haze, she saw a figure step inside. It was Marcus. Without hesitation, Marcus moved toward the wreckage, his movements deliberate and calm despite the danger. He knelt beside Evelyn, assessing the situation quickly. "Don't worry," he said, his deep voice cutting through the noise like a lifeline. "I'll get you out." Using his bare hands, Marcus began clearing the rubble piece by piece. His muscles strained against the weight of shattered concrete and twisted metal, but he refused to give up. Evelyn watched him in stunned silence, her initial fear giving way to awe. Never in her life had anyone shown such raw determination to save her, not even her closest acquaintances. When Marcus finally freed her, he gently lifted her to her feet, making sure she wasn't injured. Their eyes met briefly, and for the first time in years, Evelyn felt a spark of emotion she couldn't quite name. Was it gratitude, admiration, or perhaps something deeper? Outside, the earthquake had left the city in ruins. Buildings lay in pieces. Roads were cracked open and survivors huddled together in shock. Emergency sirens wailed in the distance as rescue teams worked frantically to assist the injured. Marcus insisted on escorting Evelyn to safety, refusing to leave her side until she was reunited with her family. As they navigated the devastated streets, Evelyn found herself questioning everything she thought she knew about life and about herself. Who was this man who risked his life to save hers? And why did his presence make her feel things she hadn't felt in years? Little did either of them realize that this earthquake was only the beginning. Bigger challenges awaited them, ones that would test their courage, challenge their beliefs, and ultimately change their lives forever. For now, though, they walked side by side, two strangers bound together by fate and the shared experience of surviving disaster. The earthquake had left the city in ruins. What was once a bustling metropolis filled with towering skyscrapers and busy streets now resembled a war zone. Buildings lay crumbled like sandcastles battered by the tide. Cars were overturned or buried. Under debris and power lines dangled dangerously from broken poles. The air was thick with dust, smoke, and the acrid smell of destruction. People wandered aimlessly, their faces streaked with dirt and tears, searching for loved ones or simply trying to comprehend what had just happened. Evelyn Harper, still shaken from her ordeal at the boutique, clung to Marcus Kane as they navigated the chaotic streets. Her elegant white dress was torn and dirty, her perfectly styled hair now a tangled mess. For someone who prided herself on appearances, this disheveled state was humiliating, but Evelyn barely noticed. All she could focus on was the man beside her, whose calm demeanor and steady presence kept her grounded amidst the chaos. Marcus moved with purpose, his eyes scanning the wreckage for signs of danger or opportunities to help. Despite the destruction, around them he seemed unfazed, almost as if he had faced such disasters before. His hands were scraped and bruised from digging Evelyn out of the rubble, but he didn't complain. Instead, he focused on ensuring her safety, leading her away from unstable structures and guiding her toward areas where emergency services were beginning to set up makeshift shelters. As they walked, Evelyn couldn't help but steal glances at Marcus. There was something about him, a quiet strength that intrigued her. He wasn't like anyone she'd ever met. Most men in her circle cared more about impressing others than helping strangers. Yet here was Marcus, risking his life not only to save her but also offering assistance to others along the way. At one point, they came across a group of frightened children huddled near a collapsed playground. Their parents were nowhere to be seen, and the kids cried softly, clutching each other for comfort. Without hesitation, Marcus approached them, kneeling down to their level. "Hey there," he said gently, his voice warm and reassuring. "You're going to be okay. We'll find your families." Evelyn watched as Marcus reassured the children, handing them bottles of water he had scavenged from a nearby convenience store. She expected him to leave after making sure they were safe, but instead, he stayed with them until rescue workers arrived. It was then that Evelyn realized how selfless Marcus truly was. He didn't seek recognition or reward. He acted because it was the right thing to do. When they finally reached a temporary shelter set up in a park, Evelyn insisted on sitting down. Her legs felt weak and her mind struggled to process everything she had witnessed. As she sank onto a bench, Marcus handed her a blanket and a cup of hot tea provided by volunteers. "Drink this," he said simply. "It'll help." For a moment, they sat in silence, watching as survivors trickled into the shelter. Some carried injuries while others appeared physically unharmed, but emotionally shattered. Evelyn wrapped the blanket tightly around herself, feeling both vulnerable and oddly comforted by Marcus's proximity. Finally, she broke the silence. "Why did you come back for me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus turned to look at her, his expression thoughtful. "Because no one deserves to be left behind," he replied. His words struck a chord deep within Evelyn. In her world, people often looked out for themselves first. But Marcus operated on a different principle, one rooted in compassion and humanity. Over the next few hours, Evelyn learned more about Marcus through snippets of conversation. He told her about his work as a construction worker, explaining how he took pride in building things that lasted. When she asked about his past, however, he became guarded, deflecting her questions with vague answers. Evelyn sensed there was more to his story, but she respected his privacy. For now. As night fell, the city plunged into darkness. Power outages had left entire neighborhoods without electricity, and the only light came from emergency generators and flickering candles. The temperature dropped, and the cold seeped through Evelyn's thin dress despite the blanket. Marcus noticed her shivering and draped his jacket over her shoulders without saying a word. "Thank you," Evelyn murmured, pulling the jacket closer. It smelled faintly of sweat and sawdust, but somehow it felt comforting. She glanced at Marcus, noting the weariness etched into his face. "You should rest too," she said softly. "You've done so much today." Marcus shook his head. "There's still work to do," he replied. And true to his word, he spent the rest of the night helping wherever he was needed, carrying supplies, comforting the injured, and even assisting firefighters in extinguishing a blaze caused by ruptured gas lines. Evelyn watched him tirelessly, marveling at his endurance and selflessness. By morning, the initial shock of the earthquake began to give way to a sense of collective resilience. Survivors banded together, sharing food, water, and stories of survival. Strangers became allies, united by a shared experience of loss and hope. Evelyn found herself drawn into this newfound camaraderie, encouraged by Marcus's example. For the first time in years, she felt connected to something larger than herself. But as the sun rose higher in the sky, strange rumors started spreading among the survivors. People claimed to have seen unusual lights in the sky during the quake, bright flashes that didn't belong to any known aircraft or satellite. Others spoke of eerie vibrations that seemed to resonate deep within their bones, unlike anything caused by an ordinary earthquake. At first, Evelyn dismissed these tales as products of fear and exhaustion. After all, when faced with devastation, it was natural for people to imagine supernatural explanations. However, Marcus reacted differently. When Evelyn mentioned the rumors, she noticed a flicker of concern cross his face. He didn't outright deny the possibility of something extraordinary happening. He merely listened intently, his brow furrowed in thought. This reaction puzzled Evelyn. Why would a man who exuded confidence suddenly seem uneasy? Curiosity gnawed at her throughout the day. By evening, as they prepared to spend another night at the shelter, Evelyn decided to confront Marcus. "You know something, don't you?" she blurted out, unable to contain her suspicion any longer. Marcus hesitated, clearly weighing whether to share his thoughts. Finally, he sighed. "I can't explain everything right now," he admitted. "But yes, I think this earthquake might be part of something bigger." "What do you mean?" Evelyn pressed, leaning closer. Marcus glanced around to ensure no one was listening. "Let's just say, I've seen things like this before. Things most people wouldn't believe." His cryptic response sent a chill down Evelyn's spine. She wanted to ask more, but the look in Marcus's eyes told her he wouldn't divulge anything further. Not yet, anyway. Still, his words planted a seed of unease in her mind. If the earthquake wasn't entirely natural, what or who was responsible? And why had it targeted their city? Despite these unsettling questions, Evelyn couldn't deny the bond forming between her and Marcus. Their shared experiences had forged a connection neither of them could ignore. For Evelyn, it was a revelation. She had always prided herself on independence, believing she didn't need anyone else. Yet here she was, relying on Marcus not just for physical safety but for emotional support as well. As the second night drew to a close, Evelyn lay awake beneath the stars, staring up at the vast expanse above. The sky looked peaceful now, devoid of the strange lights people had described. But somewhere beyond those twinkling stars, a mystery loomed, one that would soon demand answers from both her and Marcus. Little did they realize that their journey was far from over. The earthquake had been a wake-up call, shaking not only the foundations of their city but also the very fabric of their lives. Together, they would face challenges that tested their courage, challenged their beliefs, and ultimately revealed truths about themselves and the universe they could never have imagined. The days following the earthquake were a blur of activity. Rescue teams worked tirelessly to clear debris, medical tents treated endless streams of injured survivors, and volunteers distributed food and water to those in need. The city, though, battered and bruised, began to show signs of resilience. People came together in ways Evelyn Harper had never seen before. Neighbors helping neighbors, strangers sharing what little they had, and communities rebuilding from the ground up. Evelyn herself was no longer the same woman who had walked into that boutique just days ago. Her designer clothes were replaced by borrowed sweaters and jeans, her polished nails chipped and cracked from digging through rubble alongside Marcus Kane. She felt raw, exposed, but also strangely alive. For years, she had lived behind a mask of perfection, afraid to let anyone see her vulnerabilities. But now, surrounded by chaos and human connection, she found herself shedding that facade piece by piece. Marcus, too, seemed different. While he remained calm and composed, there was a tension in his movements, an urgency in his actions that hadn't been there before. He continued to help wherever he could, but Evelyn noticed how often he paused to look at the sky or listen, intently to distant sounds. His mind was clearly elsewhere, preoccupied with thoughts he hadn't fully shared. One evening, as they sat near a dying fire outside the shelter, Evelyn decided it was time to confront him. "Marcus," she began, her voice steady despite the nervous flutter in her chest. "You've been acting strange ever since I mentioned those lights in the sky. What aren't you telling me?" Marcus hesitated, staring into the flames as if searching for the right words. Finally, he sighed and turned to face her. "You're not going to believe this," he said quietly. "But I think the earthquake wasn't just a natural disaster." Evelyn's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean? Are you saying someone caused it?" "Not someone," Marcus corrected. "Something. Or rather, someone else." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "I used to work for a group that monitored unusual phenomena, things most people dismiss as science fiction, alien activity, advanced technology, stuff like that." Evelyn stared at him, unsure whether to laugh or be terrified. Aliens, she whispered incredulously. You're serious? I know it sounds crazy, Marcus admitted. But trust me, I've seen evidence. And based on what happened here, the quake, the lights in the sky, I think we might have attracted their attention. Evelyn's mind raced. She wanted to dismiss his words as paranoia. But deep down, she couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that something about this disaster was unnatural. Why would aliens care about us? She asked finally. We're just humans. That's exactly why, Marcus replied. They've been watching us for centuries, studying our behavior. And lately, he trailed off, his expression grim. Lately, they've been worried. About what? Evelyn pressed. Us, Marcus said simply. Our weapons, our wars, our disregard for the planet. They fear we're on the brink of destroying ourselves and taking Earth with us. Evelyn sat back, overwhelmed by the implications. If Marcus was right, then humanity wasn't just dealing with an earthquake. It was facing judgment from beings far more powerful than anything they could imagine. So what happens now? She asked, her voice trembling. They're testing us, Marcus explained, seeing if we can rise above our differences, if we can prove we're worth saving. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The weight of Marcus's revelation hung heavy in the air, pressing down on Evelyn's chest. She had always thought of herself as insignificant in the grand scheme of things, a single drop in an ocean of billions. But now she realized that every action mattered, every choice carried consequences. If the fate of humanity truly rested on proving its worth, then she couldn't afford to sit idly by. We have to do something, Evelyn said firmly, surprising even herself with her resolve. If they're watching us, we need to show them we're capable of change. Marcus nodded, a flicker of admiration in his eyes. That's why I stayed. To help, not just because I wanted to save lives, but because I believe we can make a difference. Together, they devised a plan. Evelyn suggested using her connections to rally influential figures, politicians, business leaders, celebrities, to spread a message of unity and hope. Marcus, meanwhile, focused on grassroots efforts, organizing volunteer groups to clean up neighborhoods, rebuild homes, and support displaced families. Their partnership became a beacon of collaboration, bridging the gap between privilege and humility. Word of their efforts spread quickly. Social media buzzed with stories of strangers working side by side, putting aside prejudices and rivalries to focus on recovery. News outlets highlighted acts of kindness, a wealthy businessman donating supplies to homeless shelters, a gang member volunteering to distribute food, a retired teacher offering free tutoring to children affected by the quake. Slowly but surely the city transformed, not just physically but emotionally. Yet despite the progress, Evelyn couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. Strange occurrences continued to plague the skies, flickering lights, unexplained hums, and sudden shifts in weather patterns. Each incident served as a reminder that whatever force was observing them remained patient but watchful. One night, while walking through the ruins of downtown, Evelyn and Marcus stumbled upon a hidden clue. A local scientist, Dr. Emily Carter, had set up a makeshift observatory in the remains of an old university building. Using salvaged equipment, she claimed to have detected signals emanating from space, patterns too complex to be random. When Evelyn and Marcus arrived, Dr. Carter greeted them with cautious optimism. These signals are unlike anything I've ever seen, she explained, showing them graphs and data on a cracked laptop screen. They're structured, deliberate. Someone or something is trying to communicate. Marcus exchanged a glance with Evelyn. This was it, the confirmation they needed. Can we respond? He asked. Dr. Carter hesitated. It's risky. We don't know their intentions, but if we want answers, we have to try. With renewed determination, the trio worked through the night, piecing together a rudimentary message using mathematical equations and universal symbols. It was simple, yet profound. We are here. We hear you. Please guide us. As dawn broke, they transmitted the message into the cosmos, hoping against hope that it would reach its intended audience. For hours, they waited anxiously, scanning the skies for any sign of a reply. Just when despair began to creep in, the equipment crackled to life. A series of pulses returned, forming a response. "They're asking about us," Dr. Carter translated excitedly. "About our intentions, our values. They want to know if we're ready to change." Evelyn felt tears welling up in her eyes. This was humanity's chance to prove that they weren't beyond redemption, that compassion and cooperation could overcome division and destruction. With Marcus by her side, she vowed to seize it. Over the next few days, Evelyn and Marcus spearheaded a global initiative, rallying nations to participate in a massive demonstration of unity. Cities around the world lit candles, sang songs of peace, and planted trees in honor of renewal. Even enemies laid down arms temporarily, joining hands in solidarity. The message was clear: humanity wasn't perfect, but it was willing to try. Back in their city, Evelyn and Marcus stood together under the stars, gazing upward with a mixture of fear and hope. The lights in the sky had grown brighter, almost as if responding to Earth's efforts. Whatever happened next, they knew they had done everything possible to tip the scales in humanity's favor. For Evelyn, the journey had changed her in ways she never expected. She had discovered strength she didn't know she possessed, forged friendships she cherished deeply, and learned that true fulfillment came not from wealth or status, but from making a difference. And Marcus, his quiet strength and unwavering belief in humanity's potential, had inspired her to become a better version of herself. As the final chapter of this story approached, one thing was certain: whether humanity passed the test or failed, Evelyn and Marcus would face it together. Their bond, born out of tragedy and tested by uncertainty, had become unbreakable. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would meet them side by side, united by purpose and hope. The days that followed the transmission of Earth's message to the stars were a whirlwind of anticipation and uncertainty. Evelyn Harper and Marcus Kane, along with Dr. Emily Carter, had become unlikely leaders in humanity's response to the extraterrestrial presence. Their makeshift observatory, once a quiet corner of the ruined university building, was now a hub of activity. Scientists, engineers, and volunteers from across the globe flocked to the site, eager to contribute to what many considered humanity's most critical moment. Evelyn, who had spent her life navigating high society events and polished galas, found herself thrust into a role she never imagined. Her voice, once reserved for witty remarks at cocktail parties, now carried weight as she addressed crowds, urging unity and action. She used her influence to rally world leaders, organizing video conferences where presidents, prime ministers, and activists discussed strategies to demonstrate humanity's capacity for change. It was exhausting work, but Evelyn felt alive in a way she hadn't in years. For the first time, she wasn't playing a part. She was being authentic, raw, and purposeful. Marcus, on the other hand, focused on the ground-level efforts. He coordinated volunteer teams, ensuring that food, water, and medical supplies reached those still struggling in the aftermath of the earthquake. His leadership style was quiet but effective. People listened to him not because he demanded respect, but because they trusted him. He believed deeply in the power of small actions, the kind gestures, the shared burdens, that could ripple outward and inspire others. Together, Evelyn and Marcus formed a dynamic partnership, each complementing the other's strengths. As the global initiative gained momentum, strange occurrences continued to unfold. The lights in the sky grew more frequent, sometimes hovering silently above major cities, other times darting across the horizon like streaks of lightning. Witnesses reported hearing low-frequency hums that seemed to resonate in their bones, while scientists detected fluctuations in Earth's magnetic field. These phenomena served as constant reminders that humanity was being watched and judged. Dr. Carter worked tirelessly to decode the signals coming from the alien ships. Each reply brought new questions, forcing the team to think creatively about how to convey humanity's values. One day, the aliens sent a series of symbols representing conflict, images of wars, weapons, and destruction. The message was clear. Is this who you are? Evelyn felt a pang of guilt as she stared at the images displayed on Dr. Carter's laptop screen. These were truths she had ignored for so long, choosing instead to live in a bubble of privilege. But now, confronted with the stark reality of humanity's flaws, she knew it was time to confront them head-on. We can't deny it, Evelyn said during one of their late-night strategy sessions. They're showing us our worst sides, the things we've done to each other and to this planet. But we also need to show them our best, our kindness, our creativity, our ability to heal. Marcus nodded in agreement. We have to tell them we're trying to do better, that we're learning. With renewed determination, the team crafted another message, this time focusing on humanity's achievements and aspirations. They included images of art, music, and scientific breakthroughs, as well as stories of individuals who had sacrificed everything for the greater good. They highlighted moments of peace and cooperation, such as international aid efforts and environmental conservation projects. And finally, they added a personal touch, a recording of voices from around the world speaking in dozens of languages, all saying the same phrase, "We are one." When the message was transmitted, the wait for a response felt excruciatingly long. Hours turned into days and doubt began to creep in. What if the aliens deemed humanity unworthy? What if their efforts weren't enough? But then on the fifth day, the equipment crackled to life again. This time the signal was accompanied by a visual display, a holographic projection that appeared in the sky above the observatory. The image showed a vast starship, sleek and metallic, surrounded by swirling galaxies. As the humans watched in awe, the ship transformed into scenes depicting evolution, growth, and transformation. It was as if the aliens were telling a story, not just about themselves, but about the potential they saw in humanity. They're giving us a chance, Dr. Carter whispered, her eyes wide with wonder. They're showing us what we could become if we choose to rise above our limitations. Evelyn felt tears streaming down her face. The message was both beautiful and humbling. It reminded her of how fragile yet resilient life truly was. Beside her, Marcus stood tall, his jaw clenched with emotion. Despite his stoic exterior, she could see the hope flickering in his eyes. Inspired by the alien's gesture, Evelyn and Marcus redoubled their efforts to unite humanity. With the help of social media, news outlets, and grassroots movements, they launched a campaign called One Earth, One Future. The initiative encouraged people everywhere to perform acts of kindness, no matter how small, and share them online, using a unified hashtag. Within hours, the movement went viral. Stories poured in from every corner of the globe. A man planting trees in a deforested area, a child donating toys to an orphanage, a community coming together to rebuild a damaged mosque and church side by side. Even skeptics couldn't ignore the wave of positivity sweeping the planet. Politicians set aside partisan bickering to address climate change, corporations pledged funds to support sustainable practices, and rival nations agreed to temporary ceasefires. It was as though the threat of judgment from beyond the stars had forced humanity to confront its own reflection and decide whether it liked what it saw. Meanwhile, Evelyn and Marcus grew closer with each passing day. Their bond, forged in the crucible of crisis, deepened as they worked side by side. Evelyn admired Marcus's unwavering integrity, while Marcus appreciated Evelyn's newfound courage and vulnerability. Though neither of them spoke of romance explicitly, there was an unspoken understanding between them, a connection that transcended words. One evening, as they walked through the ruins of the city, Evelyn broke the silence. "Do you think we'll make it?" she asked softly, her gaze fixed on the distant glow of the alien ships. "Do you think they'll let us stay?" Marcus paused, considering her question. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I do know this. We've already proven something important. We've shown that when faced with adversity, we can come together. That gives me hope." Evelyn smiled faintly, feeling a sense of peace wash over her. Whether or not the aliens chose to intervene, humanity had already begun to change. The earthquake, the lights in the sky, all of it had been a wake-up call, shaking people out of complacency and forcing them to reevaluate their priorities. As the final pieces of the puzzle fell into place, the world held its breath. The aliens remained silent, their ships hovering ominously above Earth like judges deliberating a verdict. Yet, even in the uncertainty, there was a sense of triumph. Humanity had risen to the challenge, proving that it was capable of compassion, resilience, and unity. For Evelyn and Marcus, the journey had transformed them in ways they never anticipated. They had stepped out of their comfort zones, embraced vulnerability, and discovered strengths they didn't know they possessed. Together, they had become symbols of hope, not just for themselves, but for everyone looking up at the stars and wondering if they were alone. And so, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the battered city, Evelyn and Marcus stood side by side, ready to face whatever came next. Whether humanity passed the test or failed, they knew they had given it their all. In doing so, they had already won something far greater than survival. They had rediscovered the essence of what it meant to be human. The world held its breath as the alien ships loomed silently above Earth, their metallic surfaces glinting in the sunlight. For days, humanity had worked tirelessly to demonstrate its worth, acts of kindness, unity, and cooperation spreading, like wildfire across continents. Evelyn Harper and Marcus Kane stood together under the vast expanse of stars, their eyes fixed on the glowing vessels that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. The aliens hadn't responded since the last transmission, leaving everyone suspended in a limbo of anticipation and fear. Evelyn felt a knot of anxiety tightening in her chest. She had poured her heart into this cause, using every ounce of influence she possessed to rally people toward a better future. Yet, despite the global outpouring of goodwill, doubt lingered at the edges of her mind. What if it wasn't enough? What if humanity's efforts were too little, too late? Marcus sensed her unease and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Whatever happens," he said softly, his voice steady, "we've done something incredible. We've shown them and ourselves that we can change." His words brought a flicker of comfort, but Evelyn couldn't shake the feeling that the final verdict was still hanging in the balance. The alien silence was deafening, a reminder of how powerless humanity truly was in the face of beings so far advanced. Still, she clung to hope, knowing that giving up now would undo everything they had fought for. The next morning, the skies changed. A low hum filled the air, vibrating through buildings and resonating in people's bones. It started faintly, almost imperceptible, but quickly grew louder until it drowned out all other sounds. Birds stopped chirping, cars ceased moving, and conversations halted as everyone turned their attention upward. Suddenly, the largest alien ship descended lower, hovering directly above the city where Evelyn and Marcus stood. Its surface shimmered, rippling like liquid metal before splitting open to reveal a bright, blinding light. People shielded their eyes, murmuring prayers or crying out in awe. No one knew what to expect. Then, a voice echoed, not from speakers or devices, but seemingly from everywhere at once. It was deep and melodic, resonating with a tone that was neither male nor female, human nor machine. The language was unfamiliar, yet somehow comprehensible, as if the words bypassed ears and entered minds directly. "Earthlings," the voice began, "you have been tested. Your actions speak of both destruction and creation, chaos and harmony. You are flawed, yet capable of growth. In recent days, you have shown glimpses of your potential, a willingness to unite, to care for one another, and to protect your home. These qualities give us hope." Evelyn gripped Marcus's arm tightly, her heart racing. Was this it? Had humanity passed the test? But know this, the voice continued, its tone shifting slightly. Your survival is not guaranteed. The choice lies within you. Will you continue down paths of division and greed, or will you embrace the lessons you have learned? Your fate rests in your hands. As the message ended, the light dimmed and the ship began ascending back into the sky. Within moments, All the alien vessels blinked out of sight, disappearing as suddenly as they had arrived. Silence fell over the planet, broken only by the sound of distant cheers and sobs of relief. For Evelyn and Marcus, the aftermath was surreal. News outlets buzzed with reactions from around the globe, celebrating humanity's narrow escape. Governments issued statements pledging renewed commitments to peace and sustainability, while grassroots movements vowed to keep the momentum alive. The One Earth, One Future campaign became a permanent fixture, inspiring generations to come. But, for Evelyn and Marcus, the victory felt deeply personal. They had faced the unknown together, risking everything to fight for a brighter future. Their bond, forged in the crucible of crisis, had blossomed into something neither of them had anticipated. One evening, as they sat on a hill overlooking the recovering city, Evelyn finally voiced what had been lingering in her heart. "Do you think we'll remember this moment forever?" she asked, her voice tinged with wonder. Marcus smiled, his gaze softening. "How could we forget? This isn't just about us. It's about everyone who chose to believe in something better. And maybe it's also about us choosing each other." Evelyn turned to look at him, her cheeks flushing slightly. "Choosing each other?" He nodded, his expression vulnerable yet resolute. "You've changed me, Evelyn. Before you, I thought I was alone in this fight. But seeing how much you've grown, how much you've given, it makes me want to be better, to do more." Tears welled up in Evelyn's eyes as she reached for his hand. "And you've changed me too, Marcus. You showed me that strength isn't about being perfect, it's about trying even when you're scared. I don't think I'll ever stop being grateful for that." In the weeks that followed, Evelyn and Marcus became symbols of resilience and hope. Their story spread far and wide, inspiring countless others to take action in their own lives. Evelyn used her platform to advocate for environmental causes, funding initiatives to combat climate change and promote education. Marcus returned to construction work, but he also founded a nonprofit organization dedicated to rebuilding communities affected by natural disasters. Together, they traveled the world, sharing their experiences and encouraging others to embrace unity and compassion. They visited schools, spoke at conferences, and even addressed the United Nations, urging leaders to prioritize collaboration over conflict. Wherever they went, people listened, not because of their fame, but because of the authenticity they radiated. Years later, as the scars of the earthquake faded and cities rose anew, humanity entered a new era. Advances in technology and science flourished, driven by a collective desire to innovate responsibly. Conflicts diminished, replaced by dialogues aimed at understanding rather than domination. The memory of the alien encounter remained etched in humanity's consciousness, serving as a constant reminder of the fragility and potential of life on Earth. For Evelyn and Marcus, life took on a rhythm of its own. They settled into a quiet routine, balancing their public roles with private moments of joy. On clear nights, they would sit outside, gazing up at the stars and wondering if the aliens were still watching. Though they never received another message, they carried the aliens' parting words with them always. "Your fate is in your hands." As they grew older, their love only deepened, rooted in a shared journey that had transformed not just their lives, but the entire world. They often joked that they owed it all to an earthquake, a disaster that had shaken them to their core but ultimately brought them together. When Evelyn looked back on her life, she realized how much she had gained by letting go of her old self. She had traded superficial perfection for genuine connection, fear for courage, and isolation for community. And Marcus, who had once carried the weight of his past mistakes, found redemption in helping others and building a future worth believing in. Their story became legend, a testament to the power of love, resilience, and the unyielding belief that even in the darkest times, humanity could rise to meet the light. As long as there were stars in the sky and dreams in people's hearts, the spirit of Evelyn and Marcus would live on, guiding humanity toward a brighter tomorrow. And so, beneath the endless canopy of stars, two souls who had once been strangers found solace in each other's arms, knowing they had played a small but vital role in saving the world. Together they proved that no matter how daunting the challenge, hope could prevail. And that sometimes, the greatest heroes were ordinary, people willing to stand up when it mattered most.